Today, President Irfan, in an attempt to respond to the criticisms being made of the PPP government, attempted to suggest to the Guyanese people that what they were doing in terms of the Natural Resource Fund Act is necessary. I don't think it is. Like I said before, it's an attempt to create conditions so that they can raid the treasury of Guyana and not be accountable to the people of Guyana. The president said that the Natural Resource Fund Act 2019 is unconstitutional and illegitimate because it was passed by the parliament after the no confidence motion. The president is part of the executive, but it is the judicial branch that has the sole authority to rule on the constitutionality of an act. The president has no authority to determine which act is unconstitutional. And as far as I know, the People's Progressive Party or the president did not take this matter to the court and had a determination by the court. Therefore, the president is being arbitrary and in some regard disrespectful. The president also contended that they did not participate in the debate on the bill. But the reality is, in 2019, the then opposition chose not to show up for Parliament when the bill was being debated in Parliament. If they believe that the assembling of Parliament was unconstitutional, they should have taken to the matter to court and should have refused to collect the Member of Parliament's salaries from the date of the no confidence motion, 21st December 2019, to the formation of the new Parliament under the PPP government. But the reality is they collected the money, stayed away from Parliament, and they enjoyed all the benefits as parliamentarians while claiming that the Parliament was unconstitutional. How do you on the one hand claim that it was unconstitutional when you draw in the money? Are the PPP members of Parliament prepared to return the money they collect from Parliament based on the claim that it was unconstitutional? The president said that in the act there was no governing body. This is a lie, a big fat lie. In Section 11 of the act, the Minister of Finance is responsible for the overall management of the Natural Resource Fund. Moreover, in Section 14 of the act, the investment committee comprising of investment professionals advises the Minister of Finance on A, overall objectives of the fund, B, condition, constraints and opportunities in the financial markets, C, ensures sufficient monies are available for withdrawal from the fund, D, adhering to the international best practices in the investment portfolio management, which includes the Santiago Principles, and finally, ensure the fund is adequately diversified, and so on. In addition, in Section 12 of the Act, the Bank of Guyana is responsible for the operational management of the fund. There is an operational management agreement between the Minister of Finance and the Bank of Guyana. This clearly illustrates that the President was not speaking the truth. Clearly, the Act has a governing body, and it complies with Principle 6, governance framework of the Santiago Principles, unlike what President Irfan claimed. All the President is really saying is that under the proposed bill, the Minister of Finance will delegate overall management and investment mandate responsibility to the Board of Directors, and the Board will enter into an operational management agreement with the Bank of Guyana. What the President is not saying is that this board is not independent that they will put in place. It is a board that will be identified by them. And if you know the history of the PPP, they will identify cronies and not competent professional people to manage it. However, the board of directors still needs to seek approval from the Minister of Finance before it execute the investment mandate and the operational agreement with the Bank of Guyana, Section 5, Part D of the Natural Resource Fund Bill 2021. That is the bill they are proposing. In addition, the Minister of Finance is responsible for crafting and enforcing the code of conduct of the board of directors. This code of conduct dictates how the board of directors must conduct its affairs. Section 41 of the bill. Clearly, the Minister of Finance is still in charge. He or she has merely delegated some of its responsibility to the board of directors. We need to be clear here. What they have done is put a board of directors in place. But this board of directors is not independent in the way the committee that was established under the 2019 Act would have been independent. And so what they are doing is seeking to exercise more control over the fund. The President said that this bill enhances oversight of the fund. He mentioned that Parliament, particularly the Public Accounts Committee and the Auditor General, will all have oversight responsibility. This is not new. All Guyanese know that the budget is scrutinized. There is public account scrutiny. But the real question is, does the PPP respond to those things? And the answer is no. And therefore, to mention these oversights as if they are genuine independent oversight of the fund is really an attempt to browbeat the people. Since this is nothing new under the Act, these bodies have always had oversight responsibility over the fund. In the Act, Public Accountability and Oversight Committee, an independent committee that represents a broad-based section of Guyanese society, is responsible for the overall oversight of the fund. In addition, this committee is required to provide public consultation on the overall management of the fund. It needs to be made clear here that what existed in 2019 was far more robust oversight, and that the oversight body was going to be independent, not as dependent and determined in the way the board of directors are to be determined. In the Act, the Public Accountability and Oversight Committee, an independent committee that represents a broad-based section of the Guyanese society, is responsible for the overall oversight of the fund. In addition, the committee is required to provide public consultation on the overall management of the fund. And this is what is critical. The legislation that they are seeking to amend give a wider cross-section of the society involvement and decision-making power, which the PPP is seeking to remove so that they can control the entire fund. The President failed to disclose that his government wants to wrestle away oversight authority from this independent committee and place it in the hands of the same board of directors who is also responsible for the management of the fund. Section 5, Part 5 of the bill. How can a board provide oversight and hold itself accountable? And that is the big question. What is evident is that they are shifting away from oversight to be able to have a loose situation so that they can plunder and pillage the fund. According to Principle 6 of the Santiago Principles, the governance structure should be set out in the Sovereign Wealth Fund's legal framework. For example, in the relevant legislation, charter, or other constitutive documents, it should ensure appropriate and effective division of oversight, decision-making, and operational responsibility. They are bringing them all back under one control, the People's Progressive Party government, and therefore they are removing the basis for proper oversight and independence. In the bill, the new role of this independent committee will be relegated to receiving and being briefed on the quarterly reports of the fund. In fact, under Section 41 of the bill, the Minister of Finance will craft the code of conduct of the Public Accountability and Oversight Committee. Now, this committee that was supposed to be independent, what they will do now is to give the minister the authority to craft the code of conduct, how they must behave. Therefore, they will strip them of the independence. They will strip them of their oversight functions and give themselves the free hand to do what they like. This dictate by the minister makes the PAOC dependent on the finance ministry to determine how to conduct its affairs. Once you bring it under the finance ministry, what almost immediately they would have done is remove independence, remove proper oversight, and put it all under the Minister of Finance. And so the claim that everything was going to be with Minister Jordan is not true. An independent oversight body was placed. The people who are now seeking it to put it totally in the hands of the minister is the PPP government with this approach of a board of directors. Then they talk about economically sustainable amount. What is the economically sustainable amount, you might ask? The economically sustainable amount is the amount of funds that can be withdrawn from the fund without adversely impacting the economy. I think we need to understand that there is need for a focus on the economically sustainable amount, because knowing the PPP, they will just seek to take money out to do what they like and not worry about what is sustainable. The president said that the Minister of Finance determines the economically sustainable amount. That is a lie. Under Section 20 of the Act, the responsibility of determining the economically sustainable amount was placed in the hands of the Macroeconomic Committee, which comprised, this is under the previous bill, which comprises of experienced economists. In fact, the bill that this government is proposing, they have gotten rid of it entirely. Again, we see the evidence that they do not want oversight. They want to be able to do as they like with our resources. Therefore, there's no way for any of us to determine if the amount of funds this government wants to withdraw from the fund will have negative impact on our economy. We must just trust them. That is the approach. They are suggesting they must just be trusted. They don't want the mechanisms within the 2019 Act to kick in so that they have to account to a wider committee. The fiscally sustainable amount ensures that the maximum amount we withdraw from the fund while preserving the financial sustainability of the fund, ensuring we have funds left over for future generation, and making sure that the withdrawn amounts are stable. We are worried that they are creating the conditions not to focus on anything about sustainable amounts. They are focusing on getting a slush fund so that they could withdraw as they like and will compromise the life of future generations. Even though the Minister of Finance is responsible for calculating the fiscally sustainable amount, this amount could be ascertained by anyone who follows the criteria of calculating the fiscally sustainable amount located in the first schedule of the Act. The government has scrapped the fiscally sustainable amount and has arbitrarily placed withdrawal ceilings, which includes a sliding scale ranging from 100% of fund withdrawals to 3% of fund withdrawals. For example, if US $2.5 billion came into the fund within the previous year, the government can withdraw as much as $1.5 billion or as much as 60% of the amount that came into the fund for its own spending purposes. Keep in mind that this amount does not include emergency spending for events such as natural disaster. This is very critical. Once the government removes or changes this section, they are placing themselves in a position where they can draw any amount of money. Whereas the previous act there were rules governing it, oversight, and you had to really focus on that which is a fiscally sustainable amount. As this is constituted, they pay no interest in ensuring fiscal sustainability. Clearly, this is an arbitrary approach to withdrawing the Guyanese people money, and it will ensure that nothing is left over for our children and our grandchildren. If one listens to President Ali, you will see that he is concerned that the previous act did not give them the freedom to pillage our economy, to plunder our treasury. And so they found a lot of language to conceal what is their real intention. Their real intention is to create a situation where there are no checks and balances, no oversight, and the intention is to be able to have a free-for-all. And so they are dismantling the safeguards that were placed in the Act of 2019. I believe all Guyanese who have an interest in oil resources, meeting the people of Guyana, and serving this country will oppose these amendments to the bill. Guyanese need to recognize that the bill was creating a situation in which you couldn't just withdraw as you like. You had to focus on that which is sustainable. The People's Progressive Party is seeking to remove all those checks and balances, and I repeat, create a condition so that they can steal, so that they can plunder our treasury. I want to urge all Guyanese to recognize that there is no good intention in the amendments to the 2019 Act. I thank you, Guyanese.